let's move to listen to hear what Prabhash Subasinghe has to share in the topic private sector driving the economic recovery for Sri Lanka.
Mute. Okay, great, thanks. Just give me a second so I can share my screen. Thank you. Thank you, Kasari. You can hear me well? I hope so. Okay. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Great presentation by Harsha. Thanks, Chamber, for inviting me to come and speak, share some of my thoughts. And I'm not only speaking as the chairman of the EDB today, but also sharing some thoughts as a private sector leader in Sri Lanka, being in business in Sri Lanka for multiple decades. So I don't think anyone can have any kind of presentation in today's world without talking about C19 and how C19 is going to impact the future of business. For me, I think we've looked at digitalization over a long period of time, but what 2020 has done is that it's increased and accelerated the digitalization process. What I want to share with you, if it's either business operations or in finance or customer service or manufacturing, how much are we thinking as business leaders or business managers in various businesses on how to incorporate these changes to our businesses for us to be able to get closer to within our ecosystem and finally to get closer to our customers. So yes, we've heard of all these buzzwords of IoT, AI, but the real question is how many of our companies in Sri Lanka are actually using these tools to build a better business, to make it cost effective and to be able to create value to your customer. I mean, manufacturing becomes important in the current context. I mean, we are hearing quite a bit about disruption right now with the wave 2 impacting us. And if you had more automation, you had less people operating in your manufacturing facilities, we would have less disruption. So I think it's really important for everybody involved in business and especially in the private sector to understand the digitalization drive. And we've been hearing a lot about this, but more importantly, to think about how to incorporate that to your business and how to build value to your customer. And I think that's the disconnect that normally doesn't see through. And I think that's where we need to improve as businesses and as private sector. So for sure, we need to look at what the future post-COVID is going to be and what we can do in that sphere for our businesses to be ready for post-COVID. And I think as we move forward in a post-COVID world, look at 2020. Look at businesses that survived 2020. I mean, I agree. I understand if you had an ecosystem, okay, you had businesses like tourism, etc., where your ecosystem was impacted. But look at businesses where that they were actually able to succeed due to the fact that they were agile. I mean, I was pleased to hear even His Excellency this morning talking about agile businesses. So building lean practices in your company and making it a way of life and having the agility to manage costs, to cut fat whilst keeping muscle and building a strong business. I mean, you can survive any crisis. We've survived the most difficult economic crisis the world has seen in the last few decades. So I think it's important, you know, most of these points we've known, it's nothing new. I don't say any of this is new, but I think the way companies are able to absorb this and the way the companies are able to use this as tools to make a better business, a more interesting business, a more cost-effective business is really what matters. Innovation, another buzzword. And I look at businesses, I mean, businesses historically only look at innovation as a buzzword. There's somebody in the company doing innovation. I mean, okay, that's fine. I don't look at innovation like that, and that's what I've been taught at HBS, where we talk about innovation not only for product, but you also talk about innovation for process, for service around your customer, and even your business model. So how many of us are using innovation holistically 360 degrees around our company to reinvent our company? I mean, it's a perfect example. Also, if you want to move from a red ocean to a blue ocean, disrupt your business. Use innovation to disrupt your business and to continue to lead the ecosystem by having a business model that's unique to you and where you can continue to lead. I think customer focus, I mean, if I talk about the exporters in Sri Lanka this year, none of us have been able to get on a plane, go see our customers, which most of us have been doing for the last so many years. Yes, we have used digital tools to be connected to our customer, but I think it's more than that. It's the connection that you've built with your customers, and even though you're unable to be in front of them, I think customer focus and customer-centric organizations are the ones that are going to win. I mean, I think Harsha raised this point as well. Why does a business exist? You can't say that a business exists only to bring value to a shareholder. A business truly exists to create value to a customer, to find something what the customer wants and how to make it easy for them. And I mean, I use Amazon as an example. I use one-click when I purchase things. It's the easiest way for me to buy something. I don't have to go through multiple methods. So Amazon has understood my requirement in terms of what I want as a customer. So look at a traditional organizational chart. I mean, I have never seen a customer in a traditional organization chart. You see the boss, you see the management, and you see everyone who's working. But where is the customer in the organization chart? I think the customer has to be the number one focus point in any organization, because you are here to build a business to focus on your customer and to create value to your customer. So in these few slides, the point I'm trying to make is we need to understand the direction post-COVID. I mean, COVID has come, reset business, reset the economy, but we need to understand the direction on where we're going. And I think that directionality is important for you to reassess your business and be able to see those shifts and be involved and make your companies ready to see those shifts, because your customer behavior has changed. And then on top of that, if you can build things like agility, innovation, customer centricity, you're going to have an incredible business. So I think going into 2021 and 2022, for me, that's my own learning. I'm happy to shift topic to talk a little bit about the trust industries that the Export Development Board is focusing on. And we've got 6 trust industries that we've focused on. The EDB is the leading development agency as far as exports are concerned in Sri Lanka. For me, if you talk about ICT BPM, it's a low-hanging fruit. We're doing almost $1 billion of exports. Across 1 hour away from us, from South India, we're doing $30 billion of exports. Why is it not a $5 billion industry? That's why I call it a low-hanging fruit. I think there is an interesting opportunity in this sector, not only for back office, but also for creating software and creating products. And I think that our companies and businesses should not look at this as a domestic business, but creating a domestic business for a global scenario. If we talk about electronic and electrical products, I think we missed this bus in the 1980s. Why is Sri Lanka not plugged into the global value chain? Why don't we have the Samsungs of the world who created the Vietnamese exports today in Sri Lanka? So let's say, fine, we've lost Samsung. Why don't we get the top 10 suppliers of Samsung to come to Sri Lanka? So my point is, there are incredible amount of opportunities that Sri Lanka has and that the private sector can seize on. So you need to be open to invest. You need to be open to build joint ventures, to find the right partnerships, and even bring a smaller scale from somebody like Samsung or even Toyota, for example, or any of those people, large manufacturing to Sri Lanka. And again, this is another field for us, which we think has incredible amount of potential. And I'll be talking a little bit about supply chain diversification. And I think 2020, whatever C19 has brought us, this is an opportunity that Sri Lanka should not miss. So I think it's a great opportunity which the private sector should understand and be ready to even diversify or pivot into new areas. Let's focus on the third sector, which we consider trust industry, which is the agriculture sector. I think you've seen the world focus on agriculture. Food has become so important just because of food security, etc. And even in Sri Lanka, we focus quite a bit on agriculture. So when I look at agriculture, I look at 2 things. One is at the farm level, how we can make sure that our products are cost competitive. Again, I look at it on a global scale. There's no point in telling me, guys, we can produce product, but it's not competitive against our top 5 competitors. We can have the best story in the world, you will sell nothing. So there are opportunities to be able to change our farming to make it globally competitive. End of the day, if you're not globally competitive, we're not able to take a product to market. So again, companies can look at that, let it be in technology or let it be in improving yields. These are opportunities to improve our farming. And then on the second side, when we move towards the value chain and value addition, if you talk about our export basket, agriculture is a very large part of our export basket. But what needs to happen is the real value addition in this sector. We don't have an abundance of agriculture in Sri Lanka. So we need to create niche products with the best branding, the best marketing, the best packaging, and going to niche markets where it can end up at a shelf at Harrods or Selfridges, or even in an exclusive supermarket like Whole Foods. So I think that is the kind of agricultural value addition Sri Lanka should be looking at, because we don't have an abundance of raw material, and we also are not totally cost competitive at the point of farming. Rubber products is $1 billion export from Sri Lanka. I know everybody is quite aware of what's been happening in this sector. Number one export is in the tire sector. Number two is in gloves. Both have become quite important for the world right now, especially in the area of gloves. But my point is, with the amount of know-how that we have in the Sri Lankan rubber industry, why aren't we looking at new areas? Let it be in automotive industry, let it be in the industrial sector, let it be in the medical industry, and even in terms of technology. All these technological advancements are going to have certain components of rubber, and we have the know-how in Sri Lanka for rubber. And on top of that, even increasing rubber production becomes more important as more and more companies come and invest in Sri Lanka. We've recently seen a Chinese company coming in investing in Sri Lanka with a $300 million investment, which is great for the sector. So the know-how, knowledge, everything is there, but we need to be embarking into new areas. Sri Lanka being an island, we're surrounded by the ocean. We are exporting almost $270 million of seafood. Majority of our exports are focused on biocatch, whereas on the global play, it's almost 50-50. So it's biocatch 50% and 50% in aquaculture. I think there needs to be more focus on aquaculture, not only in terms of farmed fish, but also in terms of shrimp, which is a large market. So I think Sri Lanka has the opportunity to move from a $270 or $300 million export business to a $1 billion business. Yes, we should not forget about the deep sea fishing and also the fishing in our international waters. It's an important area which we can develop on. And again, look at opportunities like maximizing the cold chain, maximizing quality, etc., etc. Finally, one sector that we've been working as far as the government is concerned, and I'm sure Sanjay, the BOI, might talk about it a little bit later on, is the pharmaceutical sector. I like the pharmaceutical sector for a very different reason, which everybody might not think about. I think I've seen a lot of pharmaceutical companies being set up in Sri Lanka, but that's being set up to manage import substitution. We're today import dependent on pharmaceutical, and that's fine. But I look at pharmaceutical as a potential new export sector for Sri Lanka. We export almost nothing in pharmaceutical products today, but why can't we set the stage for it to be a $1 billion business? Again, why can't we create the right partnerships? I mean, India is very big in pharmaceutical, and so is most of the other countries in this region. Why can't we organize joint ventures, partnerships for Sri Lankan businesses to get involved along with this new zone that is coming up in Sri Lanka in the next few months of pharmaceuticals? So this could be a new export sector for Sri Lanka where we go from zero to $1 billion over a period of time. In terms of other opportunities, I think it's also important for businesses to differentiate yourself. So, I mean, I talk about sustainability, again, a very nice buzzword, but how much of sustainability do companies really live? I mean, do you live through this in terms of when you think about manufacturing, when you think about your operations, when you think about how you take product to market? I think you need to start thinking about these factors because these are important factors to differentiate your business. Education for me is a very important area. We need more knowledge in Sri Lanka, in any sector. If you talk about the ICT sector, or if you talk about engineering, we need more knowledge. So there are ample opportunities to build knowledge, and education for me is also a very important area that we need to target and push because we need all that knowledge for the new businesses that Sri Lanka would be investing in the future. Yes, and also why don't we talk about bringing foreign companies and giving our best talent? We've seen a brain drain in Sri Lanka, but maybe the time has come for us to reverse this brain drain and for foreign companies to come and invest here and get the best and the brightest of them, of Sri Lankans working for them. Yes, I also look at things like e-commerce and digital presence, but For me, I think the real focus is building a brand and building a story around it. I think it's really important for you to move away from a commodity business. Everybody talks about commodity. There is no way in the future that you can build a business based on cost or based on pricing and being the lowest. Somebody out there is always going to beat you for it. That's the stark reality. So I think building a brand and building an ecosystem around you by using things like sustainability and living those values can really differentiate your business going into 2021. I said I was going to talk about supply chain disruption, and I think this is an important thing we are seeing. I think Harsha mentioned this as well. This is nothing new. Companies have been looking at this for years. But what has happened in 2020? The situation has only got more accelerated. For me, the target is not about taking companies or manufacturing away from China. I think Sri Lanka, being in the east-west maritime highway, is a perfect location for businesses to come and invest in. And we should look at supply chain diversification from any part of the world. It can be from Europe, it can be from US, it can be from Asia. And I think we missed most of these opportunities in the 1980s and 1990s. And I think the time has come for Sri Lankan private sector businesses to step up and seize these opportunities that's in front of you, because all of this is available for businesses. So I don't think we should continue. I mean, as Sri Lankans, we always like to talk about what we've lost, but we never talk about what's in front of us. And this is clearly in front of us. I want to talk about two unique stories in terms of companies building brands. And the first story I want to talk about is Ceylon and how they built an authentic brand. I know when we talk about building brands, Dilmah is a very common name. They've done a great job in Sri Lanka, but I've chosen two different companies to talk about. So, I mean, look at Ceylon, how they've taken an ancient and indigenous Sri Lankan product and built the packaging, the marketing around it with these amazing boutiques, which are available in 23 countries globally using a franchise model. I mean, that's the perfect recipe of being able to capitalize on a natural resource of Sri Lanka, being able to understand the needs of a customer, what's in the customer's mind, what are their behavioral patterns, what are their needs, and being able to market that in a way that you can build a sustainable business. I mean, hats off to Shalin Balasuri and his team for building this incredible story around Ceylon and how they've gone to 23 countries in the world. The second company is my own company, GRI. GRI is a manufacturer of specialty tires, which basically means we make any tire for any machine off the road. So we don't make on-road tires, but we make off-the-road tires. The company is 20 years old, and we started simply with one product in solid tires. Everybody knows in Sri Lanka is the largest manufacturer of solid tires in the world. And we started also with one product. Subsequently, we moved to multiple products in the solid tire or material handling segment. And most recently, we moved into different industries. And that's pivoting from one business in a sector to a different business in a sector, but you still have the same know-how around you. So we moved from material handling to agriculture and construction. I'm proud to say that GRI put in a new SKU to the Sri Lankan export basket in 2018 by doing this, because nobody was manufacturing agricultural tires in Sri Lanka and exporting them from Sri Lanka. GRI has 13 nationalities working for us. We've also moved from a B2B business to a B2C business. So normally a Sri Lankan exporter or a manufacturer will manufacture in Sri Lanka, go sell to a customer overseas. But we've disrupted that by having our own service centers. So we've got 9 global sales officers along with 16 B2C distribution centers across the world that actually does the servicing of these tires and fitment of these tires in various countries, in various parts of the world. So just imagine the information loop that we can create from a customer to manufacturing and how you can maximize that. And of course, GRI, we produce tires for companies like Toyota, Bridgestone, Linde, Caterpillar, and the Ports Authority of Singapore. So for me, I'm trying to tell you that Sri Lankan companies can build true brands internationally. And I differ in my opinion when we talk about import substitution and we talk about local industries with tariff protection. I don't know if that's a long-term play for Sri Lanka. I think local industry and local industrialists are quite narrow in their thinking. Look at the amount of global businesses that Sri Lankan companies have made, not only these two, but all the other large exporters. They've created global brands. They've created an incredible opportunity outside Sri Lanka. So why are we focused on 22 million people and trying to have tariff protection, which I can understand for a short term, which can give you an edge, but you've got to have a global cost competitiveness for you to be successful. I think it's more important to move from focusing on 20 million people to 2 billion or 3 billion people. That's the big picture. And I think that's a fundamental thought process that businesses and companies need to reinvent themselves in terms of being cost competitive and not look at protectionism measures to have a business, because it's not sustainable in my opinion. And everybody has done that, and it is a successful model. So why should Sri Lanka diversify? I mean, the answer for me is obvious. We've got an outdated export basket. We've been exporting apparel, which I think has been great, which is a new industry which has been created for a long time. And then we've been exporting agriculture. But I don't think these are future-proof industries. We need to be thinking about, like I said before, we need to be thinking about ICT, technology, machinery, electronics, education, for us to pivot into new businesses. So in my opinion, we have no choice. We have to diversify our export basket. Again, we need to diversify our export markets. We are over-dependent on the European Union and US. I mean, we've got duty-free access to the European Union, which is great news, almost 6,000 products having duty-free access. We have a GSP scheme in the US, again, with the market access to more than 50% of our export market in the two most concentrated countries in the world, or the areas in the world. But why are we not exporting more to India? We're only exporting 6% of our total exports to India, only 2% of our total exports to China, only 9% of our total exports to the South Asian region. So for me, the low-hanging fruit is diversifying into new markets on top of diversifying your product base. And I think that is where the government can play the role of an enabler by creating trade agreements which support this cause. I think the growth for Sri Lanka is plugging into these values. And as I said, even in electronics, plugging into a global value chain. If we can get trade access, we can have neutral duty situations, you're able to build a much bigger business than what we would have normally been able to do. This is a simple example. If I can take your focus to the bottom graph, this is over 20 years how exports of Thailand, Vietnam, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka have done. I mean, you can see the top two figures, it's Vietnam and Thailand. I mean, it's an explosion in exports. So if you talk about last 5 years, Vietnam is almost at a 15% growth year on year versus Sri Lanka of 3.7. And if I can get your attention on the top part of the slide, you can see the most important sectors in terms of any of these countries is the electronic component sector. So they've successfully plugged into the global value chain through the electronic component and machinery component, whereas in Sri Lanka, we only focus on apparel and then agriculture. So I think it goes without saying. I also look at exports to GDP as a percentage. Sri Lanka is at about 20% exports to GDP, whereas Vietnam is at over 100%. So if you ask me about opportunities for the private sector, I think the opportunities are abundant and it's in front of us. This is an interesting story about Costa Rica and how they traded bananas to microchip manufacturing. This is in the 1980s. It's an old story, but it's interesting to see how the government, using even foreign officers, government officials, private sector leaders, created this group called SINDE, which was able to work outside the government to promote more foreign investment. So they basically traded bananas to make microchips. I mean, it's a nice example to show how countries are pivoting their business. This is from the 1980s. But if I talk about a more recent affair, I mean, look at Vietnam. You saw in my previous graph on how Vietnam has exploded in the export sector. And most recently, Vietnam has signed a free trade agreement with the European Union, giving access to all their products into the European Union. So my concern is, I think this is where the government can play an enabling role, where we set the stage to create this kind of investment and to create this kind of market access so that our companies in Sri Lanka can exploit and grow from there. And I don't think you can bring in a foreign investor to Sri Lanka and leave them alone. There's a lot of aftercare that is needed in terms of supporting, and that would be the job of the government to create an enabling environment. So EDB's plan as a lead government agency in exports, yes, number one is to support our existing exporters, and we've been doing I would say we've been doing a great job this year in making sure that the businesses are not disrupted as much as it should have been. It's been a national priority in 2020. So my 1 year of social service this year working for the government probably has paid off. I'm quite happy about that. The second part of that is about promoting new exports and new export sectors and diversifying the export basket. I've spoken to you about that, diversifying into new markets. Again, we've spoken a little bit about that. We're also looking at enhancing capacity building. We need to build knowledge to our exporters. I mean, even from the basic thing of developing a website to a more sophisticated thing about how to bring in sustainability to your business, you have to build knowledge. My job is to figure out how can I make $1 million exporter a $10 million exporter? How can I make a $10 million exporter a $100 million exporter? That's my job. And then finally, the catalyst in all this is FDI. I keep saying this at all opportunities that I have. We need knowledge and capital in this country, and we need to bring in foreign direct investment to create this knowledge and capital that Sri Lanka desperately needs. And private companies in Sri Lanka and private enterprises in Sri Lanka can plug into that by using that either in terms of a joint venture or a partnership. Going forward, the future of the EDB is about, we are focusing on these trust industries, looking at dedicated processing zones. EDB has been given the role, along with the Foreign Ministry at the last budget, to look at trade agreements and to how to craft user-friendly trade agreements with Sri Lanka. So as I've been saying, that's an important point. And of course, making our exports more cost competitive, so removing things like para tariffs. End of the day, ladies and gentlemen, governments can't do business. It's not the job of a government to do business. It's a job of a government to create an enabling environment for businesses to thrive and for businesses to expand. So ladies and gentlemen, with that, thank you very much.